2 years ago, I could only use AI as fast as I could work. Now with agents, that ratio and that correlation actually has been completely decoupled. With cloud, it was very hard for the large enterprise to go and adopt this technology. With AI, you have so much more trusted partners that it's also meaning enterprises are adopting this technology far faster than they did the cloud.
You've mentioned, I think, about AI agents. This is $1 trillion opportunity. But could you elaborate, how do you see that happening? How can founders capitalize on this?
Find something that if you asked people, if I had software that did this thing for you, you'd be really happy about. But the vast majority of the world today has not been able to take advantage of that because the cost of doing so would be way too high. Anytime you have a gap like that is where AI is going to be extremely powerful. We have way more use cases than we have the current capacity to go meet. And I think it behooves sort of all companies to imagine what would it be to run your company in an AI first way.
The first question that I have for you is you were one of the original kind of successful companies from the cloud wave. So you've been at the start, you've experienced one big technological wave from start to finish. Then we sort of had a crypto wave, but now we're having the other big wave, which is AI, which just feels completely insane. So I just wanted to ask you, what are sort of, do you see some overlap there, or do you think this is just something completely mad and different?
There's actually a lot of overlap. If you watch the kind of trajectory and the rollout of the technology and the sort of evolution of how all of the today we call them hyperscalers, but previously just the big tech companies were getting into the space. It followed a very similar trajectory. There's a massive difference with AI. It's happening about 10 times faster than it did in cloud. And so if you think about, Amazon Web Services was launched in, I think, 2006, and we didn't have Google Cloud probably for another 5 to 7 years. Azure, took a number of years to really kind of figure out its way in terms of how it fit in. If you just think about the corollary to today with AI, ChatGPT launched at the end of 2022, and we now have, arguably kind of 6 major model providers that all are spending, billions, if not tens of billions on GPUs. They all have state-of-the-art kind of AI models in a 2-year period. So the pace at which the infrastructure is being built out, the breakthroughs are happening, the competition is extremely, it's high quality competition that of some of the world's best talent, ever. That is what is so different. And then that impacts the adoption rates of these technologies massively. Because with cloud, if you only had AWS and you had a couple, SaaS companies building on top of it, it was very hard for the large enterprises like the JP Morgans of the world to go and adopt this technology. With AI, now that you have, Microsoft, Google, XAI, ChatGPT, OpenAI, Meta with Llama, IBM supporting open source, you have so much more sort of trusted partners in the enterprise that it's also meaning enterprises are adopting this technology far faster than they did the cloud. So, it's an incredible time to be building software because the rate of adoption is far faster than ever before, and the rate of progress is far faster than ever before.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of crazy stuff is happening. Every week, I feel like there's some new development, which feels like it could change everything. Just in the past 7 or 10 days, we've had Grok, we've had a Sonnet 3.7 Sonnet, and, just an hour before this call, GPT 4.5 just came out. So, quickly, I wanted to get your take on GPT 4.5. I know you just tweeted about it as well. And then I sort of just want to get your macro view. If you zoom out, what do you think is really going on? What's actually worth paying attention to that's going to matter 12 or 24 months from now?
Yeah. This is an industry and a time period where if you have ADD, you're well served. And if you really like deep focus, you're just what is going on? So probably most of us in tech have some diagnosed or undiagnosed, one of these issues. And it's now it's our time to shine, based on how quickly everything's moving. But the forest from the trees would probably be that we should expect over some degree of time, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, doesn't matter the number, that, intelligence will basically cost as much as the cost of the GPUs and not much more. So maybe like 5% more or 10% more, because you will always have open source that is this counterbalance on any one model provider from extracting too much margin.
Mhm.
DeepSeek is a great example of that. What Zuck does with Llama is a great example of that. And so you can imagine that basically as all of these, as all of the research gets more pervasive, as all the best practices in doing training, post training become more pervasive, then what's going to happen is the cost of intelligence is going to drop, and it's going to continue to drop. And what you're seeing with things like these reasoning models that are doing more thinking and chain of thought that's sort of built into them, at the same time that the cost of intelligence is going down, the amount that we throw at that is also going up. And so I think in the next few years we should basically assume that an AI model can kind of solve any type of problem, and that means that you probably want to be understanding where is that going to fit into your, if you're building software, where is that going to fit into your software architecture. But then conversely, if you're just in the enterprise, maybe deploying technology, or you're an end user, you also want to start to anticipate how are your workflows going to change in the future. And I've already seen this affect my own personal productivity dramatically, where increasingly I will have 5 or 10 different tabs running, where I've sent off an AI agent to go do something for me, and then I just go and check back in on its work at some point in the process. And so I'm kind of like parallelizing my work in a lot of cases, where you have AI agents are just augmenting what I would normally do. I maybe I would have handed it off to somebody, but a
Yeah.
lot of times it's just I would be spending my time going and researching the internet for an hour on a topic. Boom, you send off a deep research agent. It comes back with the results, and then you're on to the next step. And so I'm finding that I'm sort of becoming more of a manager of AI agents, and then I'm kind of rolling that all up to the work I'm doing. And I think there's going to be a version of that for basically everything. So we've already seen that in coding with Replit and Bolt and Lovable and Cursor. I think we're going to see that we're going to see it in every sort of domain and field, in legal, in healthcare, in HR, in marketing. And so we're only at the earliest stages of what that's going to look like.
Aaron, that's a great point. So you've mentioned, I think, about AI agents, like, hey, this is $1 trillion opportunity, which seems insane. Uh, but could you elaborate, like, how do you see that happening? Obviously, you just like touched upon, like, hey, you'll see agents across industries, but like, how can founders capitalize on this?
Yeah.
How do you think like enterprises should be thinking about this? Love your perspective on both
Yeah.
both those segments.
I think there's a few different frameworks that one can use right now. So, the simplest framework that I've seen be so successful, that kind of transcends AI. So it worked really well in mobile, it worked really well in cloud. But the simplest framework I would do, like if I had to start a company tomorrow, it would be something like, find something that if you asked people, like, if I had software that did this thing for you, you'd be really happy about, and you'd really want that, but where the vast majority of the world today has not been able to kind of take advantage of that, because the cost of doing so would be way too high. It would be too labor intensive. It would be too complicated. And anytime you have a gap like that, which is like a high degree of demand, but a low amount of sort of, kind of actual usage, because it's just too costly, that gap is where AI is going to be extremely powerful. So, the coding companies right now are a version of that gap, which is a lot of people in the world would love custom software for some particular problem they're trying to solve, or I want to build a website, or I want to be able to go serve my customers better. But the cost of doing so is too high, or the friction is too high. And so AI has been this sort of bridge to make it just way easier to build software. I think, similarly, you can kind of go industry or function by function, which is, there's going to be a function, and you guys are obviously seeing the space. I'd love to go generate more leads for my company, but hiring a whole sales team, I don't have enough budget to go do that. And so thus I'm sort of like constraining the growth of my company, because I can't go and hire as many people as I need to go solve that problem. Well, AI then all of a sudden, with an agent can go and do that. In our world at Box, we have a lot of use cases where people say, I'd love to go automate some workflow around my contracts or my invoices or onboarding clients, but it's just too expensive to either build that technology or to have people go and review all that manually. So I don't even ever explore that as a thing that I could go and automate. AI in all of these areas is then the gap, or the solution to that gap, which then means that there's startup opportunities on the other end of that. And so find these markets where the largest companies in the world can afford it, but the smallest companies can't. AI is that bridge that makes the small companies afford it.
And like get like
You know,
some and get specific outcomes out for the end user.
yes, yes, and which is now this other new variable, which is the business models of software are changing.
Yeah.
So, it used to be in SaaS, it's a very simple model. For better or worse, you say, how many employees do you have? Well, okay, it's $20 per employee per month to use the software, and then you're kind of good. Now, and it has its pros and cons. It's, the customer can stop paying if they're not getting value. So the recurring nature of it is actually very helpful for the customer. But the downside is that you're not really paying for a business outcome. It's still up to your employees to go and deliver that business outcome. And and yet now with AI and with AI agents, and especially consumption models, it completely changes, because now you could say to the customer, you only pay us for as many leads as we generate. You only pay us for as much software as we code. You only pay us for as many bugs as we find. You only pay us for as many customer support inquiries we solve, which is, again, a totally different way that the world has thought about relating to business software. You never paid for outcomes. It was
Yeah.
your responsibility to deliver the outcome as the customer. Now the software provider is going to be delivering that outcome to you. So lots of transformation that's going to
No,
happen
I
in
think
this
like that.
space.
I think the outcome model is great. Like at Snowflake, we had the consumption-based model. Now I think you can really think about consumption with like, hey, outcomes, and that's kind of like the new AI models coming. So at Box, like, how are you guys thinking about like kind of like implementing AI? Also, your business models, like, how are they changing?
Yeah. So there's sort of two or three different big areas, but the easiest ones for everybody to understand would be, one, as you can imagine, we sit on a lot of critical corporate data. Your financial documents, your marketing assets, your contracts, your HR records. And so the first big use case is just letting you talk to that data for the first time. So I can go into a portal and have all of my sales materials in that portal, and I can just ask it questions. And now I get back answers, as opposed to having to read the underlying PDF to get value from that. So all of a sudden, we're taking all of this unstructured data in your enterprise and turning it into value, and turning it into this sort of it's almost like a digital memory for your organization that you can just tap into at any point. And why that's a really big deal is that, imagine you're a new employee, you come into a company, you've never, you don't know who to talk to, you don't know what the company, how the best sales rep goes and sells the technology in that company. All of a sudden, if you can just ask, some system a question, it's going to get you all of the best practices instantly, just like you'd be talking to a human. So that's the first big thing, which is we just turn all of your corporate data into business value. The second one is that AI is remarkably good at pulling structured data from your documents. So you give it a contract and you say, give me all the fields from this contract. You give it you give it an invoice, and it pulls out all the relevant fields for that invoice. And so AI is going to let you then automate your workflows, because it can actually pull out that data from your information. And then the final piece is that we make all this available via our APIs and through the end user interface. So if you're a developer, you just come to our APIs, and now you can build,
On top
you
of
know,
Box.
build all of these workflows without having to deal with the storage and the data
Yeah.
governance and the security and the content management. We take care of all of that.
No, that's amazing. So just kind of like summarize for our viewers. So LLMs are really good for you guys from a summarizing, research, and generation perspective. Where do you think you're gonna like be pushing the boundary next, as you see like GPT 4.5 came out, and like Claude just launched 2.7? Like, how are you
Yeah.
excited about in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, so I think we're just starting the era of what we've all been looking at for a couple years of AI agents. I think 2025 will be like 2022 was for chat experiences. Maybe the early part of 2023, which is to say that we're all going to be building these agents. They're going to get more robust, but we are not yet in the complete tornado that we were with chat like a year ago or a year and a half ago. AI agents will take some time to bake. We have to figure out which ones actually work well. You're already seeing this from the Replits and Cursors of the world, where the agents are getting much better at coding. We saw this from Operator with OpenAI, where it can use a browser in the cloud to automate tasks. It does sort of fail in some areas, but you can see a glimmer of what that will look like. So I think the next 6 months is again building that kind of early foundation in the plumbing of AI agents. We have more ideas than we have capacity to build them, which are, I want an agent to go review my contracts. I want an agent to be able to go in and automatically approve or look at invoices. So it's way more use cases than I think again we have the current capacity to go meet. But it starts to show what the future of work will look like, and I think it behooves sort of all companies to imagine, like, what would it be to run your company in an AI first way? How will
Yeah.
that transform different parts of your business? How is it going to transform how you sell? How is it going to transform how you build software? How is it going to transform how you enable your customers? And again, I think this is the year where that will start to become a lot more clear.
Yeah. You talked about the future of work there. So let's imagine we, have this fully agentic future, maybe 2 years, 5 years from now. So let's imagine it's 2030. Agents are everywhere. What does that company actually look like? I mean, are agents replacing human? Are they kind of assistants working alongside us? Or does every person have like 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 agents working underneath them? Like, what is sort of like, the picture in your head?
Yeah, I mean, this is moving so fast that I do have to admit that the farther out we get, the hazier my kind of like crystal ball ends up looking. Um, Simply because the workflow that I did with AI 2 years ago is already completely obsolete, relative to today. It used to be 2 years ago. I could only use AI as fast as I could work, and now with agents, deep research, etc.,
Hmm.
it's like that ratio and that correlation actually has been completely decoupled. So
Yeah.
so you could do one thing for 5 seconds, and the AI could go work for 20 minutes, and that becomes now a 5 second to 20 minute, kind of, well, even more than 20 minutes if you kind of think about all the work it compressed. So uh so I it's guaranteed that you as an end user will have many agents that you are interacting with and that you're deploying on your behalf. Every knowledge worker will have this going on. Maybe some have 100, maybe some have five. Almost doesn't really matter. What will happen though is that our work will absolutely change as a result of this. We will become much more in the business of synthesizing the work that the AI is doing, taking parts of different work that an AI is doing and kind of mashing it together. We will be spending much more time on creative, kind of intuition oriented tasks in the future. Ironically, the more AI that there is, the more interpersonal skills are going to matter,
Yeah.
because you will not be able to get by in the workforce if all used to do is sort of, I moved something from this spreadsheet to another spreadsheet and I calculated something. Like, you have to be the person that can bring insights to the business, or go talk to the customer, or connect the dots between different teams or people. So I actually think, it's this very ironic thing. Like, in one scenario, you could have imagined like business gets more like autonomous, and we become automatons. But I actually think the opposite's going to happen. We're gonna deploy all of the autonomous agents to go do the drudgery work, and we as people are going to spend way more time on the interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And spending 2 days to go fix a little bug, that was an error of some library you used, those days are over. Like, you're just going to be like, boom, AI agent, go do that.
Yeah.
Devin, go
Yeah.
go go fix that for me. Replit, go fix that for me. And then you're going to spend more time saying, hey, what product should we build? And how should we build it? And what's the user experience of that product? And hey, did we talk to customers? Which is going to completely change the nature of company building. The one X factor that I think is obviously built into your question is, do we start to have 10 or 20 person companies that generate 100 million in revenue, or 500 million in revenue, or billion in revenue? And we're already seeing a version of that with Cursor, is maybe the best
Yeah.
example of the recent kind of crop of that. But that will be completely mind blowing as we start to see the leverage that you can create there.
So, Aaron, you have talked about like AI's role in job creation. You said AI will create more jobs than it kills, but let's get real. A lot of jobs will get lost as well. What are your thoughts, both from a positive perspective and negative perspective, around the job creation impact AI will have?
One of the biggest taxes on productivity is the fact that when you're a more junior or early employee, you have a massive gap between what you can do and everybody else in the organization. So the maybe the bull case is that now as a younger, more incoming employee, that productivity gap or mismatch, should start to. I mean, obviously the bar will get raised for everybody, but that early part of this that ramp curve gets accelerated dramatically as a result of AI. My ability to now navigate a new code base that I'm fresh into is completely different, as a result of AI. My ability to get the best practices of an organization is completely different because of AI. So, one of the maybe counters to the tendency of saying, hey, now, this is a tough time to be entering the workforce, because of AI. The counter to that is actually, as an employer, Box specifically, I actually feel more confident in a younger employee coming in because I know they're going to make their way around the organization 10 times faster than they would have 5 or 10 years ago. So that's sort of one thing. The second thing is that I'd actually just kind of argue that if you just think about most of the work that we tend to do and that we tend to spend time doing, it's kind of just waiting on some other interdependent part of the organization to do something for us. It's waiting on the legal team to tell us if the contract is approved. It's waiting for the product team to give us the product spec. It's waiting for the customer to get back to us, about why they ran into their bug. Um, and I think what AI does is it basically is a technology for acceleration. And I'm very convinced that if you could accelerate through those things, it's not that you need then fewer people. It's that you will just simply do more as an organization. You will ship more. You will ship more software. You'll sell to more customers. You'll better serve your customers. And I think most companies will reinvest the savings that they get in efficiency gains from AI back into the
Yeah.
business to go and drive more growth.
No, I think that's a great point, right? Like I think like the expectation is that the bar goes high. If you come in, kind of like coming in with the fresh eyes, but you should be leveraging AI now to like move fast, deliver more outcomes, deliver more output. And so the bar is
Yeah.
not like, hey, it takes you like 2-3 years to like learn or
Yes.
6 months to ramp up. You're like, hey, you can be ramp up in 2 weeks and just start delivering value to the bottom line.
Dylan Field from Figma had this great line, which is that AI lowers the sort of floor. So, lowers the floor of access into a thing. And in this case, I think he was probably referring to design. And then what's interesting is it raises the ceiling. So that means the expert now can get way more done. So it's this incredible technology where the aperture expands in both directions, where a person who's never coded in their life can start coding, and an expert coder can, if you were a 10x engineer, right, before, you are absolutely going to be a 100x engineer, because
Yeah.
even the 10x engineer is now bottlenecked by a bunch of things that are just like not that efficient for them to be, spending brain cycles on. So, and this is kind of this, now this model of vibe coding, which is so interesting, which is you could just breeze through stuff. And yeah, I think we're going to like question the quality of a lot of that code right now,
Yeah.
but it's not obvious that in 2 years or 5 years,
Yeah.
we will have that problem.
Just one quick question from my end. I guess we can wrap up then.
Yeah.
The nature of the internet seems to be changing. I think we're heading towards a point where there's going to be more AI generated content on the internet than human generated content. There's an incentive for there to be even less human generated content because it's becoming so much more valuable now. I think that whole point about secrets becoming valuable again, Ben Thompson talked about that recently. So, I mean, what are you seeing? I mean, do you think there's going to be are we going to create walled gardens for humans on the internet? Are we going to try and set up like a parallel system? Like, what does the future of the internet look like, especially for
Yeah.
humans on it?
Yeah, I know, totally. We probably screwed this up. Now we're gonna get paywalls everywhere. So
Yeah.
uh that's we can blame the AI labs. I mean, I think that there's a couple components. One, I do think that we will see more paywalls. I think that we might just have to run into the natural end state, which is like the if you were to design the internet from scratch, I think we probably would imagine something where like there's some kind of like toll for accessing certain types of resources if somebody puts that toll up, and then you just automate, how do you do that? Crypto, I think attempted to imagine what this could look like. Whether or not you need crypto, it kind of doesn't matter. But I should be able to just like go to the Wall Street Journal and read an article, and have 5 cents get taken from my browser, to go and do that. So maybe we just have to get to some end state where, the secrets are just like, they're still secrets, but they're very frictionless to kind of navigate around and get
Yeah.
access to things. That's the sort of one thing I'd like to see. I do think it's going to raise the value of your kind of corporate knowledge and your corporate data, which is inherently, private and proprietary. This is obviously, the space that we play in, which is, once you have assets and information that are very valuable, you want to kind of keep them to yourself, but you still want to make sure that people in your organization can leverage that data. And that's this sort of great, relationship that you can now have between AI and your own knowledge in your organization. So, as those barriers ramp up, kind of grow, then having tools inside your own organization for managing that information become, very valuable.
What's like your prediction for like AI for the next 6 to 12 months? Like, what would you say? Like, hey, like 3 top things you're like, hey, very excited about, maybe a bit concerned about, or like just excited.
I would say AI agents are going to absolutely augment how we're working, and I think that every organization needs to be thinking, how do they become an AI first organization? So that's what we're excited about.
Amazing. And then who would you love, like who you think we should be inviting next, like to get like who you kind of enjoy following? I know you're very active on Twitter.
Yeah.
So who do you enjoy following on Twitter? Like who we should definitely be getting on a podcast like this?
Yeah, I think there's obviously clearly a lot of good folks that you guys know the names of. I think folks like Alex Wang at scale is deep in the trenches of the latest AI model breakthroughs. I think Amjad building Replit, around the future of coding agents is fantastic. So, certainly anybody seeing the breakthroughs and
we just reached out to Amjad. Yeah.
Oh, funny.
That's
Cool.
awesome.
Yeah, he'd be awesome. So
Amazing.
thanks, guys.